The creativity, the innovation, the ability to just dream about things and understand them at a deeper level is really important. We're really hoping it opens their minds to new possibilities. We hope it builds curiosity and that sense of wonder, and that students are naturally more curious to find out more. We want students who can go, wow, I can do this. Right? My name's Dr. Christopher Hurley. I'm Head of Educational Futures Division on the YCYW Education Network. So the underwater robotics camp is really an amazing opportunity for our students to immerse themselves in the world of marine robotics, marine engineering and marine science. We had 6 schools contribute students. Around 40 students actually attended and 13 teachers.
Why you don't put it upside down and paste it and then put it the other way around again?
Because then it's too close to the back so it doesn't get balanced.
No, what I mean this.
We have 2 teams, Year 8 boys team and Year 7 girls team.
So this is the front of your robot?
Yeah.
We last year started the robotic CCA, where they were already getting involved with creating a physical model and also the programming part to make it alive. This was an opportunity for us seeing the second phase of this, in this case with something totally new.
This is really an opportunity for them to translate that attitude towards that into something real and practical, to understand when they get into higher year levels, you know, how things work, why they're learning what they're learning.
What if it happened like this?
So if it drives up, so what's going to happen is, with that, if you have them there, is that it naturally will try and drive it that way.
Camps like this, by bringing the technology in an accessible way to the students, and a fun way and an interesting way, and a way where they get to meet different people and understand that technology is a way not just to change the world, but to change people's world.
Sometimes we actually want to just immerse the student in the experience. Why? Because we almost don't want them to prepare for it. We want them to have a sense of shock. Sense of, oh, what's happening, you know, and almost surprise and wonder about it.
Do you hold it? Now you can turn it on.
There'll be times where, you know, our teachers do need to push and take charge and guide the process.
You're gonna put also some of the sand in the water will make it go down. That's it.
There'll be times where they need to pull back and allow students to just explore, to make some mistakes.
Hello.
You know, to fail sometimes and learn from those failures, you know, to become better, to become stronger.
It's okay. Now turn it on.
Ultimately, what I like to think of is we don't have teachers and students. We have young learners and we have older learners. But we're all learning together, and that's what makes up our concept of the learning community.
All the technology implication and evolution in our history are scary at the first, because everything can have 2 different uses, and depending on how you apply.
I think that's one of the hardest jobs, because it's changing so fast. I wouldn't want to put a limit on what any of my students are capable of realising in their lifetime.
I absolutely love anything, any change on the planet, whether it's AI or otherwise, is going to be a challenge. So it releases them to be more creative, to be more innovative, to think about the philosophical and the ethical issues around these sort of aspects. It's giving us the ability to get back to who we are as human species. So it all takes a lot of work and a lot of time, but we're really setting it up for a long-term sustainable future.
Conceptual and emotional.
Outside of a normal
Put a student into any university.
Do respond to the negative and
in 5 minutes, it will be time to put the iPad.
Success can be achieved. When I was talking about
I'm Dr. Christopher Hurley, and I invite you to join us each month as we connect with you through our webinars and other programs. This year, our theme is the Power of 3: Smart Kids, Smart Parents, Smart Schools. This builds on the success of the previous programs over the last 3 years and emphasises the importance of us working together.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of our YCYW Parent Webinar Series, and thank you for taking the time to join us. My name is Ryan Peet and I am the Western Co-Principal at YCIS Shanghai Puxi. Tonight I am joined by panellists in a live question and answer session. We will discuss ways to support our parents with children, explore current issues with families and identify new opportunities for homeschool collaboration. Our aim is to answer as many questions as we can over the next hour or so please send your questions using the chat box on your device. Tonight's webinar is broadcast in both PolyV and WeChat channels. In PolyV you can watch in both English and Chinese. In the YCYW WeChat channel you can watch in Chinese, and in the YCIS Shanghai's WeChat channel you can also watch in English. Without further ado, I'd like to invite our panellists to briefly introduce themselves before we get into any questions. We're going to start with Puay.
Thank you, Ryan. Good evening. I'm Puay, Parent Relations Officer at YCIS Shanghai Puxi. My role is to connect parents with the school and to build a sense of community through parent events and activities.
Good evening. My name is Jana and I'm the YCYW Cross-School Curriculum Coordinator for Wellness.
Good evening. I'm Amita Patel and I'm the Education Technology Head and Design Tech Head at YCIS Pudong.
So we're ready, should we get into some questions?
Yep.
Okay, so the first question that we've got is from our parents in both Yantai and Guangzhou, had a similar question. How do schools perceive the role of parents in their child's education, and how can parents work better with the school to fulfill this role? Start with Puay.
Okay, I think at YCYW, we view parents as partners, and we really want parents to be engaged and actively involved in school activities. So please join our sessions, whether they're information sessions, coffee mornings, volunteer in your children's class at school activities. I think that will make a lot of difference in engaging with the school.
I think it's very important for children to see that their parents are involved in their school life. So any opportunity that you have to come into the classroom to read a story or help with the setup of resources, being visible in the community is very important.
And you know, a lot of our parents are experts in their fields. So it's really wonderful when such parents come and talk to not only kids in their class, but maybe their year group or even whole school and share their expertise.
Of course, and I think our schools are certainly communities and we want our parents to come in, and over the last 12 to 18 months we've seen that come alive again in our schools. How can parents better involve themselves in the children's life at home as well, do we feel? Jana, do you want to?
I think it's very important for parents to connect with their children, especially depending on the age that their child is, it might look differently. So for young children, might be reading stories with them at night, having a chat about the school day. And older children, it's really important to connect with them in their interests and things that they really find valuable. So if you have a teenager who really enjoys gaming, then maybe finding out a little bit more about the games that he or she likes to play and spend some time with them doing that.
Amita, I know you've got some ideas on how to do that well with your teenage boys.
Yeah, so my older son is in university and he's not, he lives in the dorm. So connecting with him on a platform that is comfortable to him is what we use many a times. And in fact, just before our webinar, he just reached out to me for a question related to something about teaching, a gig that he's doing, and he always reaches out to me on these kind of things. So it's nice that he has that relationship that he can just call up anytime and ask for advice, or give me some advice sometimes.
For all our families, that's not always possible. A lot of our parents are busy, they work in different cities, and this is a question again from Yantai: how can parents who frequently travel and have those demanding work schedules still connect with their children, maybe young children or older children? It is a challenge for some of our families. How can they do that? I know, Puay, you might have some ideas.
Yeah, so I think we've got really good online tools now to connect and keep abreast of what's happening. So we've got Seesaw, we've got Management, and through these kind of snapshots, we know what they're learning in school. But it's important, I think, to set aside time to still talk to your children, whether they're young or whether they're old. I mean, with teenagers such as mine, you have got to probe a little bit more, because they may not share as freely as, when they were young children. But it's important, I think, to have conversations over dinners, over shared family time, just to understand what's going on in their lives, what they enjoy and what they struggle with, perhaps.
I think the parents who travel, it's not about the quantity of time you spend with your child, but it's really about the quality time. So when you do have those moments with your children, how are you showing up for them? Are you being present in your conversations, or are you on your device while you're spending time with your child? So having that real time for connection where you just have the undivided attention to your child is very important, and it doesn't have to take a long time, short moments every day. And when you travel, you can still do that on WeChat or on online platforms, read them a good night story or have a video call with them. Can still keep that going.
I think it's a challenge, and I find this challenge myself is about being present around your son or your daughter sometimes. Even when you are at home, you've had a busy day at work, you've got different things to do, and I'm sure a lot of our parents are in the same situation. Do you have any tips, I guess, and this is impacted a lot by technology, do you have any tips on maybe how we can stay a little bit more present when we are at home?
I think those device-free times is very important. So often a good time to make a device-free time is dinner time. If you spend time together as a family having dinner and everybody leaves their devices away from the dinner table, creates that opportunity to keep the connection going.
Amita, how does device-free time sit with you being ahead of technology?
Oh, that's a rule in my family, and sometimes, with the adults, there are interesting conversations because it applies to everyone at home. It's not only about the kids, like we model for our kids. So it's really important for us to follow those same rules and regulations. And it's hard.
I know.
It's really hard because,
we're all a bit
addicted.
Yeah, exactly. So it's so important for our kids to understand that these are certain rules and they are non-negotiable, and that's what it applies to everyone in the family, including grandma. And dad.
Okay. So we have we've got a screen behind us here that's putting through some live questions for us, which we'll occasionally drop into. But one of the live questions here is: what if my child is also traveling with me a lot? How can we support my son to keep up with schoolwork when we are away? Go on. We've got a couple people who've been in the classroom here.
Yeah, I guess this is something that we all faced, especially with COVID. And we all had a huge learning curve with technology. And that's the beauty of technology. It keeps us connected. So when a child is traveling with their parent, the child also needs to stay connected with his friends and his peers, right? So technology helps with that. So kids can dial in into their class, so they are spending class time with their peers. Now, this is not only when they're traveling, but it also could be if a child is sick, for example, and has an extended period of time when he's away from home. So that's a great time when you just talk to your children's teachers and find times that work for your child to stay connected with his peers, do lessons together, and group activities. These tools, there are so many tools that we use today that can help your child is not in class but can still be doing their work online and is seen in his class by the rest of the classmates.
I think that social side that you mentioned is equally as important, right? Just like we say when parents are traveling, they need to stay connected to their children. When the child is traveling, it's important to stay connected to their friends. And there's lots of ways that they can do that, meet each other online for a game, or they can watch a movie together, or spend some time together on video calling or FaceTime.
Yeah.
Right?
Puay, I know you've got your teenage children.
Yes.
that will provide these challenges to you. How do you feel about staying connected with them and staying present? Is there any tips that you have?
I think as a parent, we want to be involved in their lives, but we also recognize that as children grow, parents are less important, their friendship circle becomes more important. So it's important to build the relationships, I think, when they're young, and to maintain that going forward, so that they're still comfortable coming to you with advice to share their lives. And it's two-way, right? As parents, we share with them how our work day has gone. We share stories from our childhood. They can relate. They can't relate to a technology-free world because our childhood was we had no iPads.
No internet.
No internet. Like, what did you do, mommy, with your time?
I had internet.
We're giving away our age.
Go on, sorry, I jumped in.
Yeah. So I think it's just maintaining that connection even as they grow older.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on then, obviously this is a hot topic that we've got so far is AI. AI has really been coming and our teachers are talking about it a lot as an organisation. We've really driven forward in how we implement it in our schools. Parents are asking a lot about it, as we saw when we put a survey out in preparation for this session tonight. So a lot of our parents are unsure what actually AI is, what does it look like, but also how does it affect our education system. Amita, go on.
So AI is that part of computer science, that field of computer science, which creates these systems that kind of simulate human cognitive abilities. So like problem solving and understanding patterns and doing these kind of things in a way without explicit programming. And it's just, you can think of it as your very knowledgeable good friend who you can ask all sorts of questions to and get responses. But putting in the questions is very important. There's this whole new field of prompt engineering coming up because it's very important to ask the right questions to get the responses that you want.
Great.
And it's incredibly useful as teachers, as parents, and even for the students, because there are certain tasks that are kind of being redefined by using these technologies, which were just not possible before. So I know there are a lot of apprehensions also, some people have that, but being more knowledgeable, trying these tools out by yourself can really help you understand what it is and then help you see how your kids are using it and how schools are implementing these things.
You just mentioned their apprehensions, and I think two of the main apprehensions is probably the safety of our children and of all of us online, but also the cheating element. So I'm going to start with the child protection element and the safety of our parents. Jana, how does that affect you? What's your thinking about how AI is going to impact the safety of our children? Because that's what you drive across our schools, right?
Yeah. So I think safety is always our number one priority, and it's always about educating the children around the risks involved as well. Children need to know that there might be times when they're going to be exposed to some things that maybe they shouldn't have been exposed to, and what to do in those cases. So having that really strong relationship with your child so that they know that when they are in a situation when something happened that maybe shouldn't have happened, they come to you for support. Puay mentioned earlier about, especially teenagers, as they get older, they gravitate more towards their peers for support. And that's why it's really important to have those solid relationships before they reach teenage years, so that if something happens, they come to you. I think it's also important as parents and as adults to stay in touch with what our children are doing, what platforms are they using, what kind of information is on that platforms, how do those platforms work, so that we can understand what they are engaging in as well and be prepared to support them.
And if I may add a little bit here, many a times we talk about filters and putting all these things on devices or on websites. While it's very important, and at schools we all have these kind of things in place, but it's important to remember that there will be a time when those filters don't work. So it's really important for us as educators and as parents to realize that those filters really need to be in a child's mind. And that can only happen with education and lots of conversations at home. So as a parent, talk to your kids about, talking to them about the different things that they use technology for, and having conversations is like the way to really go ahead in that.
Thank you, thanks. Puay, you speak to a lot of our parents, and I know this is a hot topic amongst our parents, and we get a lot of questions around it. What's the vibe from our parents? What are they thinking? What are their concerns? Is it similar to what we're mentioning here?
Yes, I think what we've mentioned, plus the fact that I think as parents, we kind of grapple with how schools are using AI, and then we want to understand when should students use the tools and when students shouldn't use the tool. So we had kind of a recent conversation in our family about use of AI, right? So obviously using AI to write an essay is a no-no, that's cheating. But then if you're talking about AI as a tool to summarize your essay, to improve your essay, then that kind of becomes a gray area. So I think these are some of the questions that we are kind of pondering on. When is it appropriate to use? When is it not appropriate to use? And I think it's an evolving field because there are so many questions just out there, and AI is just constantly changing.
The second fear that we obviously had the safety, the fear is a bit of a strong word, but anxieties we have around AI is the cheating element. And one of the live questions that's just come in is, I'm worried that my child, from our WeChat channel, I'm worried that my child will just cheat using AI. What do I do? Amita, I'm going to come to you. What do you do?
Sure. So as teachers, we're actually having these conversations right now at school. We just had a meeting the other day, and we were, especially as the kids grow older and they are in high school and exam years, these are very, very relevant questions. And the interesting thing is that it's new for everyone, right? And we're learning along the way. So it's really important to, just because we are worried doesn't mean that we block them from doing it, because they're going to do it. And then they're not going to talk to you about it. So it's important to understand the process of writing. So for example, if they're worried about writing an essay, getting it from, from AI, then what are the steps involved in it? How about having a conversation about your child about the essay? What is the essay? When you're not reading it or you're not looking at a device, but you're talking about your essay, you know that your child has done it by himself, and the whole process, and that's what we are talking as educators, is that, when you use tech tools, it's not that you just give them the tool and you let them be. It's the process that's involved in writing that essay. It's not like you give a topic and your kids just sit and write it. There are drafts involved. There are steps involved. And along the way, if you're involved in it as an educator, your kids are using AI to enhance their thoughts, not just use AI to do it.
I think as parents, it's also about putting that boundary in place, right? So you educate your child around your values, and cheating, whether it's copying from a textbook or copying from a website or using AI, it's still cheating. So it's that honest academic integrity and promoting that as a value, and then having consequences, right? Because you have a boundary around it. So if your child then continues to engage in using it as a tool, like what are you going to put in place as consequences, and how do we use that as a learning opportunity for them to not do it again then, right?
And it requires us all to be on the same page, right? It requires school, home, students to be on the same page to really value that honesty around their education. And I know a lot of the exam boards now are adapting their practices to make sure that we do that, but I agree that teachers know, they see, and they can see, now we can see things that are written via AI. When somebody says to me, with heartfelt thanks, I know it's ChatGPT, because nobody uses heartfelt thanks everywhere else, but now it's coming up everywhere. And occasionally I might use ChatGPT and go, oh yeah, you've wrote with ChatGPT. Anyway, we'll move on to the next question. At what age should children be engaging with AI? This is a I don't know what the answer to this is, and I don't know if any of us do, but I'm sure we've got some opinions on it. At what age should children be engaging with AI, and how should parents be guiding their children on AI in alignment with the school? Now, this is something new to all of us. It's like something new in terms of education. It's really exciting because nobody's got any educational baggage with it. It's all new, and everybody's at the same learning point. So, what age should children be engaging with AI, and how should parents be guiding their children on AI in alignment with the school? Puay, what's your view on this from, I guess, the parent relations view?
I have a love-hate relationship with AI. so I think it's useful. I think we all know it's useful, but as parents, I kind of grapple with, like you mentioned, keeping up with AI technology. Like, I think my teenagers are ahead of me in terms of that. They know more about it than I am. So as a parent, I have a responsibility to kind of learn along with them. And then along the way, kind of like Amita and Jana discussed, what are the boundaries? When is it appropriate to use, and when is it not appropriate to use? Yeah.
I think it's hard to put an age to it because children are exposed to AI from a young age, right? So Amita can talk more to it, but all the games that children play on their iPads and devices, they're all AI generated in any case. So you're not going to prevent them from being exposed to it.
I wonder, like, my daughter's 5, and I wonder what the world will look like when she's 15, like 18, sitting her exams to go off to university somewhere. What impact will AI have on her assessments and things like that? I have no idea what that's going to look like, which is exciting, but also causes me quite a lot of anxiety. I don't know what that's going to look like for my daughter, as well as all our children. So it's an exciting time, but we need, I guess, experts and ourselves to live with that and engage with that to make sure we're creating the best opportunities for our children. Building off that, then there was a question that was given to us when we put the survey out prior to this event from Songshan, which was about STEM. How do we inspire our children to be engaged and inspired by the STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering and maths? How can we do that? I know you do this on a daily basis, Amita, so go on, you drive this question.
You know, it's so important to build on that curiosity, right? You want kids to get excited with these kind of things. And as a parent, that's an amazing opportunity because you can do things with the kids from a very young age. Like I remember with my kids, when I have 2 boys, they're teenagers now, but when they were little, we would do Lego on the weekends. We would spend hours and hours doing Lego because Lego is amazing. It's not only a creative tool, but it's also problem solving. You can do so many things like that with your kids. You can build so many different things. But cooking, I think cooking is a great way to not only learn about STEM fields, but build bonds. Like, for example, if you are making a pizza, right? What a wonderful way to bring in math conversations, measurement. You can talk about, you know, when you cut a slice of a pizza, you're talking about fractions, right? When you are teaching your child to make, say, a cup of tea, you can talk about evaporation and condensation and all these different things. Doing science experiments with them. That's just so much fun, and kids get so excited when they see your passion and interest in it. One of the things I remember doing a lot with my kids when they were in primary was their favorite YouTube was Bill Nye, the Science Guy. And the music still comes in my mind when we talk about it, but they just loved it. Animal Planet, Discovery, there's so many channels out there that can help those conversations. What about taking your kids on museum visits? Like in Shanghai, we have the Maglev. Huge and amazing conversations can come out of that visit, you know, when you talk about all the science behind making those kind of things. So doing these kind of things are not only creating that excitement with science and technology and engineering, but also that family bonding time and those time that you can really, really cherish later on.
I think as parents, we've all heard our children say, oh, why am I studying this? It's not relevant. I'm never going to use this in the future. So like Amita mentioned, I think it's bringing science and math into everyday life and showing them how it's applicable, how it relates to them, you know, money, cooking, etc. I think that then makes it come alive for them, and then they get interested in the subject.
Right. And I think having them see that you're excited about it as well, right? So when you're engaging in some of those activities that you mentioned, we go back to being present in those activities, right? So really taking the time to enjoy those things with your children and share your curiosity and enthusiasm about the subject with them as well.
I think that's it, yeah. If you show that there's the enthusiasm there as a parent and you show the importance of it, I think that's really valuable. Like, right. Amita, you talk with such passion. I don't know this answer, but your sons, what are they studying at the moment?
Oh, my older son's in university. He's doing computer science.
Okay.
No surprise. And my youngest son is in year 10 doing his IGCSEs.
And is he doing computer science?
No.
No?
Yeah, but he loves design technology.
Oh, okay. So the making aspects of it.
Yeah, he's a creative. He's got the creative bent of mind, but technology is huge. He's a huge fan of tech, so he loves doing things with tech.
Okay.
And design. Yeah.
But I think that design and the coding element, the computer science element, and the design technology is coming together. Like, we have the robotics programs at school, which is a perfect way of blending those two disciplines together. And the passion that some of our students show is amazing, but that comes from seeing the passion in other people, right? Whether it's their teachers or at home, and if it's both at home and at school,
it's incredible.
It's really quite powerful. Yeah. To change the topic a little bit, then, one of our questions from one of our parents in Qingdao, but I know this is a really important question for a lot of parents, and it makes me slightly anxious, but we'll go with it. How can parents effectively discuss topics like puberty, relationships, and sexuality with their children? Now, I mentioned before, I've got a 5-year-old girl. Something else, as well as AI in the future, I'm dreading this conversation. How do we go about this effectively? I know we've got a lot of sessions that we do with parents and we do things like that, but Jana, you've worked on this quite extensively over the last few years. Yeah. What's the route? What do we do? What's the best way?
I think the best way at the moment is not necessarily the way that we grew up with or that we find culturally comforting, but our children today are being exposed to more and more information at a younger age because of their access to different websites and different platforms and social media. So it's really important to normalize the conversation, and as parents we have to be really brave sometimes and be courageous through those uncomfortable situations. But it's always better if a child finds out this kind of information from a parent rather than through a website or through a peer.
Agreed.
So we always, when we do workshops with parents, we always recommend to normalize it as soon as possible. Children usually start getting curious about the topic around 9 years of age, but if they've had exposure, then you might have to address the topic earlier. So it's really about knowing your child. And then when they're really young, they're quite happy with a biological answer, and they're usually grossed out and they don't ask too many further questions. But it also depends on your child's personality. Some children do have a bit more questions and they are a bit more curious. And if they're a bit older and they've had prior exposure, then it becomes more complicated. I always chuckle a little bit at this question because, like you mentioned, I've done a lot of work in this area for our schools in the last number of years. And my child found out watching a movie. So we went straight from the movie theater to the bookstore, and we bought a book so that we could have a conversation that evening, and he was around 9. But neither of us anticipated going into the movie that was going to be in the movie that we watched. So I always recommend books. Books is a very useful tool to take a bit of the discomfort away. It gives you a third point to look at, and you don't have to look at your child having that conversation. But it's also about having really strong relationship with your child so that they're comfortable coming to you with those questions.
I know, Amita, we did a brief rehearsal earlier, and you gave a little scenario about yourself, which I found hugely interesting and quite eye-opening for myself, and gave me some great ideas. So tell me what you do with your sons to try and get them to have those difficult conversations?
Right. So I didn't approach this topic at that age. My kids were a lot older, so it got a lot more complicated and more, I would say, a little uncomfortable to talk about it. So what I would do is like, I'd have a date evening with one of my boys, not put together because they are 5 years apart, but with one of them, and we'd pick, invariably it would be a coffee shop because my boys were like 13, 14, and coffee is a kind of a thing at our home where it's not something you can have all the time. So at that age, so it was like a treat for them.
Okay.
And I would have the coffee, they would end up having a sugary drink. But it was a date evening, and it just relaxed them. And it wasn't only about this topic, but any topic that really was bothering them or they wanted to ask about, they would actually find that time to be very comfortable to spend that time and talk about these kind of things, you know, like one of the things, we talked about we talked about drugs and alcohol and things like that. And it's just something that I wanted them to know, that if you have made a decision before you actually go to a party or before you have someone offer that to you and you've decided that, no, I'm not going to do it, it's a lot easier because then the peer pressure is not there to do it. So these kind of conversations on different type of topics we would have over our coffee in our date evenings.
How did your teenage son react to being told he was going on a date with his mum?
Well, initially he was like, a date? Okay. But then it just became a regular thing, and they really enjoy it. Like recently with my older one who's in university, our date evenings have turned to different things. We went for a 2-hour walk in Shanghai, in Puxi, and we were just talking and walking, and we ended up going to some other place instead of where we had planned to go. But it was just so meaningful and so nice, and he talked about difficult things. And it's just that he knows that he can come to me anytime.
I find that walk and talk is really helpful with my son as well. So when we usually have a difficult conversation to have, we always go for a nice long walk, and that helps. I really like your date idea, and I don't think we should wait until the children are teenagers to do that, right? Children can build a strong relationship with mom and a strong relationship with dad, and you can have a special activity that you do with dad. You can do it with your daughter already, and one that you do with mom. And in those times, you can talk about everyday problems and how you solve problems, and you start with small things that relate to them now. And that's how you build trust and you build relationship. And by the time you get to where they need to find out more information about some of these topics, that bond is already there, the comfort is already there, the trust is already there, and it's so much easier to have that conversation.
Normalising those conversations, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a cultural element to this. Like, there's different age groups, and even Western, sometimes seen as liberal, but I never had these conversations with my parents. It never happened. I learned from my friends at school, probably the wrong way in hindsight. But Puay, obviously, you're
I'm Singaporean, Chinese, yes.
So different, yes. And a lot of our families maybe similar backgrounds.
So growing up, I never had this conversation. And when Jana mentioned we should have the conversations with our children young, 8 or 9, I'm like, I started too late. Well, it's better late than never, but I find it's easier to ease into these topics also over a casual, like dinner conversations, family conversations. When your kids are telling you about how school went, oh, this boy is really annoying. I'm like, yep. Sometimes that happens, right? And then you ease into relationships, puberty, growing up, handling all the issues that come with the growing up years and all. It always helps to have it over a casual conversation. You laugh over your opinions. Daddy has got different views. Mommy's got different views. The teenagers have got different views, right? And that's where you share all your values and opinions.
And this is a question that I think listening to you all, you've all gone forward with this, all as mums. But what about dads? How can dads get involved? How can dads have these conversations? Is it the same? Does it look different? Are the principles of these conversations the same?
I think the principles are the same, but the relationship might look different. It depends on dad's interest and the child's interest and mom's interest. Like Amita mentioned earlier, they really like cooking. So if mom likes cooking and the child likes cooking, having an opportunity to cook together. But dad might like football, you know, or something more active. So then if you take your child to football and afterwards you go for an ice cream or a milkshake or a hot drink if it's winter, it's just about creating those opportunities where you really have that undivided time with your child, one-on-one. Family time, very important, but building relationship individually is equally as important with all your children, like individually and together, right? So whatever the interest, and I think it's generally more effective if you go with the child's interest. So my son really loves basketball. If I want to connect with him, you know, we go play basketball and then afterwards we go for dinner. So it's really thinking about what he likes, and sometimes as adults that means we might do something that we don't like. Yeah. But it's not about us, it's about making sure that we have that relationship with the child. Yeah.
I've got there's a few follow-up questions. I'm gonna just jump on that you've just said about your son playing basketball. It's not as like you say, okay, go and play basketball, but also there's times where you need to look at, and your son, he doesn't want you to watch him play basketball sometimes, so you have to be like, we had the final the other week and he didn't want you, don't come and watch me, mum, I'm too nervous, or something like that. It's like, okay, so it's about being tolerant of what they need sometimes as well, especially when they get into teenagers and they've got that peer environment as well. They are still teenagers. Sometimes our teenagers are moody, they don't want to talk to the parents. It does happen.
And it's very different. So for example, the basketball I was able to watch online, but volleyball I could go in person. So, you know, you have to go with what your child wants. And if I went against his will, it would have made him uncomfortable. So sometimes as parents, it's putting our own wishes to the side and just thinking about what they need and how we support what they need in the moment.
And you know, sometimes kids have the worst possible time to ask you the most difficult question. It's 11 o'clock at night, everyone's ready for bed, we're way past our bedtime, and bang, that's when that difficult question comes up. And I've learned over a period of time that you just drop whatever you're doing, don't sleep that night if need, but sit down and answer your child's questions. Because really...
We're looking at each other going, is this not a diverting tactic from not going to bed on time?
Well, no, because at least with my kids, whenever I've had those conversations, they were serious things and I was exhausted the next day. But it really helped elevate whatever was the worry and the fear in my child's mind.
I think the things that are coming through are just giving the time and being present with our children, right? And it's such a challenge nowadays, and we all see that. Going back to a previous question, then we've got another question coming through live from WeChat. Stephen asks, and I guess this is about motivation with learning and STEM. We're kind of jumping around now. I guess as more WeChat questions come in, we'll start to do that. How do we motivate our kids learning in the subjects they are struggling in? That's a challenge, because they're struggling in them, so they're not how can we do that? Go on, Jana, do you want to start?
I think for a child to be motivated and internally driven to do something, even that they don't like, a couple of things has to be present, right? So they have to have voice, you have to give them agency, they have to experience success, and they have to be challenged a little bit by it so that they feel like they're growing and they're learning through the process as well. So if you have a child who's really struggling in a specific subject and you want to get them a little bit more motivated, think about what are the choices that your child has in that subject. So homework is not negotiable, but you can decide, do you want to do your homework now or tonight? Do you want to do it independently or with my help? Do you want hot chocolate or apple juice while you do it? Like, how can I make it easier for you, and what kind of control can we give back to them? If you find that your child really struggles with it, because maybe that's a barrier to them engaging in the subject, break it down into smaller chunks, have them finish one part, then take a break, one part, then take a break. I think sometimes we put unrealistic expectations on our children. Our children have unique strengths and unique needs, and we need to really know, what our children are capable of. And if if that's a subject that they're not really strong in, how can we scaffold the work for them, make sure that we're giving them enough breaks, and reach out to the school for additional support if they're not succeeding. But having them experience that success and have that voice is very important for them to feel motivated.
I think it helps sometimes when we share our struggles, like when we were growing up, I struggled with this subject, and I think that it helps reassure the child that it's a normal process. If the subject is new, especially for our kids, year 6 going year 7, they're taking additional subjects. When you go from year 9 to year 10, again, that's a change. I think reassuring them that we went through that, we survived it, here's how we handled the pressure, here's how we overcame the struggles. I think that reassures them in a way, and then they deal with it at their own pace.
If I may add, especially when the kids are a little older and they're teenagers, peer support groups can really help. Sometimes you have older kids who are tutoring younger kids, and those relationships really help the kids and motivate them and, get them going again.
They also talk the same language, right? So they have a different way of explaining things to each other that we don't always understand.
Right, and plus we have learned things differently. Like if I say math, for example, the way I learned math back home in my country in India, at that time is very different from how my kids are learning math right now. But their seniors have done that the same way. So having those kind of kids work with them can help. And some of the schools do these kind of
peer
things.
Tutoring,
peer tutoring. We're doing that, and it's useful for some of the kids.
Certainly, I think a lot of the time it's so interesting when I speak to students and they might be struggling in a subject. They go, "Are you wanting to improve?" And they go, "I hate it. I'm not good at it. I don't want." And they go, "Well, do you put what are you going to it quite often?" "Yeah, I go to a tutor 5 times a week for it as well." They're not engaged with the tutor because there's no motivation. So it's about seeing the need for that subject in some cases, the motivations to doing it. Do they see it in the long term? Is it something that they see the career aspirations to? A lot of our students are developing those career aspirations earlier now. They're seeing more careers. Do they see these subjects as the subjects that they're doing as useful for them? We believe, whilst we wouldn't teach it them, that they are. Right? We believe there's a purpose to every single subject that we teach. School, parents, teachers, we need to give the motivation for them to see why there's a need for that subject. Maths is a perfect example, right? Maths, people always go, "Oh, maths, I have a fixed mindset, I'm not great at maths, I don't want to do it." But maths, like you were saying before, it comes into everything. Economics, it comes into money, it comes into, if you want to be a landscape gardener, it's all really important. It comes into sports science, it comes into everything. But we don't realise, I had that fixed mindset about maths when I was younger. I knew I could do my times tables and I was okay at it. But once I got to my GCSE years, I was like, what's the point? What am I going to need it for? I think if I'd have had somebody to explain it to me better, I might have been somebody who would have gone further in maths. And it would have helped me in business studies when I'm dealing with budgets in my job now. Right? That would have really helped me out. Anyway, we'll keep moving. We've got another question from WeChat. This is from Tiffany. So thank you, Tiffany, for your question. How can we support students with special educational needs? We'll go to the specialist. Jana, to start with, I think, on this one.
I think the biggest thing that you can do is acknowledge and accept, right? Not some children do have special needs, and as a parent, that's really hard to come to terms with sometimes, right? Like we want our children to become successful. And sometimes when they have learning barriers, then we worry because we worry about what might become of them one day and, how we get them there. But I think the first thing that you can do is accept that your child learns in a different way, and then reach out to your school support team, because we have a lot of expertise in our school, in our schools who work with, who have a lot of experience in working with children who has extra needs. And then it's walking that journey with your child. So at different times in your child's life, the needs might change or look different, but it's being open to getting additional support, being open to having those conversations, and being honest about the struggles. And if you are open and honest about your struggles, then we can support you in the right way. If that honesty isn't there and the trust isn't there, then you might struggle. So I think we work with a lot of expertise in our schools, and we work closely with external providers, and we modify and accommodate the students and their needs. So for some children, programming might look a little bit different, and some children might get additional support at school or additional therapies at home. But we get all our children through the system, right? They all graduate and they all become successful in their own unique fields. Your child might not become what you had in mind, but they will definitely be successful in something else, because even with those challenges, they still have strengths, right? So really thinking and identifying what those strengths are and helping your child to develop in those.
I think it's like a lot of the topics we've spoken to tonight. If you need support, speak to your school. Like, well, I know there'll be a lot of people watching tonight from different schools, but speak to your school. They'll have things in place which will support and have those have a conversation. We work with a lot of parents, and it's not easy. We understand that to have those conversations around your children, but if there's expertise around special educational needs and some of the other topics that we've spoken about tonight, the puberty, the relationships, the sexuality questions, speak to your school. There's so much expertise in the schools, AI, technology. Have those conversations. We want to have those conversations with parents, because ultimately we all need to be understanding each other. We might not agree on everything, but we do need to be understanding each other so we can get the best for our students.
We all want the children to
be
successful.
We all want them to do well, right?
Yeah.
It's not, and the trust takes time sometimes, but it will get there, I'm sure. Our next question is about working with students with some mental health concerns and stress. It's becoming exam time. We've got our IGCSEs coming up, our A-level exams coming up, our IB exams coming up. This is a time where our children get stressed, our students get stressed. Some of them are adults now, getting 18 years old, some of our students. How do we help to manage that anxiety, the stress, and in some cases depression? I know you hear a lot about this. Puay, have you got any ideas from different ways?
I think for students, they need an outlet to release stress. So it could be sports, it could be a hobby, it could be music. They just need something else other than academic studies that they can go to kind of just free their mind from studies. Yeah. On the topic of stress, I think it's not just students who experience stress. As a parent, my child's in year 11, he's going to take his IGCSEs. I'm experiencing stress on his behalf. Yeah. And
Singaporean, right?
Yes, Singaporean Chinese. Yes, so I think it's me ensuring that my anxiety doesn't pass on to the child as well. Yeah. It's like, chill, Mom, it's my exam, it's not yours. Which is true, right?
Yeah. How do you feel when he says that to you, though?
I said, you need to take it more seriously.
I think it's very important for parents to model how they manage their stresses and anxiety, right? So modeling, if I feel stressed, I go and do exercise, or I take a walk, or I take a break. But I think, especially in our schools, a big thing that we work with parents and families closely is that accepting and believing your child, because sometimes the child expresses anxiety around a certain subject, and then some parents would say, she's just being dramatic, or he's just being dramatic. So it's really about taking your child seriously and recognizing that it is a real issue for some children, and then talking to your child about extra support. We do have counselors in all of our schools that the children can access to support them as well, and they can also support families. So if you have struggles to come to terms with your child struggling in this area, reach out to the school, because that's what we're there for, once again, to support in that area.
Something that we've really invested in over the last few years well, I'm talking personally from Shanghai, but across our organisation, really, counsellors and helping support our students. We've had a difficult few years, we're not going to hide away from that. And there's still a hangover from that with some of our students, so we can keep going. I'm going to try and get some more questions in, because they are coming through quite quickly now, according to our screen. So I'm going to come to you for this one for Amita, because I know you've got some strategies for this. How can we avoid our child's addiction to games when they need to use technology so much? So we do have game addiction. but we also encouraging them to use technology. Where's that balance?
Yeah.
I know you've been through this with your boys, haven't you?
Yeah. The main word is balance.
Oh.
That's what we need to provide for our kids, is to understand. Well, first of all, let me tell you this, as a parent and as an educator, games are amazing, because there are so many things that the kids learn through gaming, and you will only understand that if you sit down with your kids and actually play these games. But then you have to follow certain guidelines, and your kids have to understand that there is a kind of a guideline around it. For example, in my house, growing up with two boys who love games, we have only one television in the house, and everyone does gaming, watching TV, watching whatever on that one television, which is placed in the family room.
So not in the bedroom?
Not in the bedroom.
Okay.
Devices are not in the bedroom. I always encourage my kids, you want to play whichever game, that's okay, but you're going to play it in the family room where there is an adult around.
So who gets the TV then? Who decides?
Oh,
schedule?
That's the conversation that we have as a family, right?
That's the balance.
Yeah, that's the balance. And it's also what happens is that the kids bring in whatever games. Some of them are shooting games, right? Some of them are amazing games where they're constructing and building. But the point is that they're playing everything in front of you. And so if you see something that you feel is inappropriate, that's the time when you can have that conversation. Or rather, hold on to that thought, have the conversation after they finish playing with them. But you will see that
Sorry, I'm going to jump in. Why? Because if, I guess, some parents, well, I would probably, I'd jump in, I'd go, that's inappropriate, get off it now.
Yeah,
why wait?
They're going to listen to you. And
they're
that's
just
not
do it without
they're just going to do
without
it
you
without,
knowing.
yeah, and that's not going to be the right time when they're in the right frame of mind to accept your
I guess they're in the game and they're in the zone, right?
Yeah.
Shooting.
Yeah. So maybe
screen.
sit down at that time and kind of understand what that game is around, because then you can have those conversations with them later and put in your point as to why it's not okay. And what was okay about those games, because some of those games, oh my God, they require strategy. Like, I don't know if you all have ever played Risk. Growing up, we used to play Risk. We spent hours playing the board game Risk.
That's enormous.
And that's yeah, Ron, you might not know that, but that's intense strategy, right?
Yeah.
These games are far beyond that. Like the kind of thinking skills you need for some of these games are incredible.
Do you think any of that's transferable into their learning?
You are using so much of your learning to actually build those strategies. And so they are pretty intense. Some of them, their design elements are incredible. You know, you can talk about so many careers based on the design of those games and things like that. So storytelling, some of the games are incredible with their storytelling. So if you sit down and actually watch what your kids are playing, it'll just give you so much more ammunition to talk to them. And you can, and they will understand that you know the game, and so are more open to you.
It requires
that connection power.
Yeah.
But it requires a lot of self-restraint and management from yourselves, right? Because I can imagine you could, in this room, maybe a family gets addicted and you're all 8 hours a day every weekend gaming together, because they sound that good.
Yeah, they do. But we always, one of the things when my kids, especially when they were younger, we would have a timer. And the timer was far away. So in my kitchen on my cooking range, we have a timer. And so my kids would put the timer there. It's like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever your family decides. It's different for every family, right? And so then they have to physically get up and go and turn off that timer. And so there's that disconnect, and they know that they can switch off.
So you've all got teenagers now. How does have you had the same situations? How have you managed this gaming? Because it's a huge thing, and I'm going to push us a little bit further on it, because I know it's a big thing with our parents.
It's been very clear on the boundaries. So we don't do gaming during the week, but he can play at the weekend. And we always manage emotional regulation. So if he gets too aggressive or too frustrated by the game, that's an immediate stop. So as long as it's fun, but if it's not fun anymore, like that's a boundary. And then it's really about sticking to those times. I think having those regular breaks and balancing it with being active as well. He loves gaming, but he equally loves his sport as well. And I think having both is okay.
How about you, Puay?
For me, gaming is less an issue because both my teenagers are not as into gaming. they're more into, I guess, social media, videos and stuff like that. But like Amita and Jana mentioned, it's all about balance. You know, you've got responsibilities, you complete your homework, you've got some time on your device. They've got other activities after school, so when they're occupied with CCAs, they are in musicals, they are in sports, there is then naturally less time to spend on the device as well. So I think that helps. Having them be active in school life, after school activities, that all then creates that balance automatically.
I think there's a thought that gaming addiction's new, but it's been around for many years now. I think we had the first PlayStations and CD-ROMs and things like that. And many people might not know what we're talking about here, but even the Game Boy, right? That was people being addicted to it.
My brother and his friends all brought their big computers for a weekend of gaming.
Yeah.
Another question, just continuing with the gaming theme. How long should we set the gaming time for children? One quick answer, go.
Well, it depends on the age of the child.
Quick answer.
Well, if the child is young, less time.
Okay.
Right?
Family value.
Yeah, family value. Yeah. True.
It really depends on family value, I would say. I wouldn't put, for me it was, if I can see you're getting too aggressive, that's an end. So I didn't really put a time to it, but it was more about what the response was like and if it was fun or not. But I think, that's up to families, individual families.
I think as you mentioned as well, like social media and the gaming I think the values are the same around it. It's designed to be addictive.
Yeah.
They're designed to be addictive. That's how the companies make the money. So.
And what are we modeling? Are we telling our child to get off their device while we're sitting on our device 8 hours a day, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's the challenge of modern society as well, right? I think we're coming near to the end of our session tonight. I don't know if there's any more questions. I don't think any more are coming through. So tonight kicks off a big weekend for YCYW. Over the next 2 days, we'll be running our first education symposium here in Shanghai in this very room. There will be still an opportunity to sign up to the online sessions on Saturday. So please check our YCIS and YCYW social media channels for ways to sign up. Thank you for everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. We hope you found the answers helpful, insightful. If there's any further questions, please drop them in the chat and we'll be happy to maybe answer them by writing, or maybe even we'll do another session at some point, see what the feedback's like from this one tonight. I'd like to thank the panellists for taking the time this evening to join us, and we've had a smile and a laugh at times, haven't we? I'd like to thank everyone behind the scenes for working so hard for making everything happen. Have a lovely evening, and please join us again for the next parent webinar series. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.